Good morning and welcome to the Mental Health Connection. My name is Betsy Johnstone, and this morning I am here at Edenton Baptist Church with their pastor to have a sit down with Dr. Koby Strawser. Thank you for having me, Koby.
You are so welcome.
You know, Koby, it's been about 1 year since I first met with you.
Mm-hmm.
I came here to meet with you to tell you about a local community faith-based initiative to help our community with mental health, and we were going to call it the Mental Health Connection.
Correct.
So we were just getting started, and I was hoping to get you and your church on board to host perhaps a conversation, a community conversation about mental health, and you were more than ready to sign on. And then towards the end of our conversation that day, you shared with me that you have lived experience with generalized anxiety disorder.
Correct.
And I was so impressed and appreciative of you sharing that with me because you'd only been here a few months and I was a perfect stranger. But so many people do not share that kind of information because of stigma. And that's why we're doing what we're doing. So I was so glad recently, and I pop in now and then just to chat with you, and I love that. And I was so glad recently when you agreed to share your story. So now I'd like to turn it over to you, Koby.
Thank you, Betsy. So I was honored with the task of helping to lead the November discussion.
Yes.
And you asked me to share my story with generalized anxiety disorder. You're right, there is a stigma, particularly with folks in leadership, and even more particular with clergy. I think that there is this notion that because we wear both a literal Father Hiro and a metaphorical collar, that we should have everything all together. That those life experiences that so many of our friends and neighbors face, such as depression, anxiety, any kind of mental health disorder, that in no way should that affect us because of that collar.
Right.
And we're in a position of leadership where we're trying to steer the ship, so to say, when it comes to church life. And so there is this expectation, whether it's voiced or not on behalf of the congregation, that the leader, our religious leader, needs to have it all together. And as you and I both know, you can be a devoted, faithful follower of Jesus Christ and still struggle with mental health.
Absolutely.
Just because you have that title of Christian, that doesn't mean you're exempt from the struggles of mental health.
Just like other health issues.
Correct.
Right? You can be
Physical
a pastor
health,
and have any number of health issues.
Correct. So let me give you just a brief rundown of how I have struggled with anxiety. And I shared all of this in the November meeting, but I know for those who were not able to come, hopefully this will give you just a small window into my story by watching this video. So I was raised in what looked from the outside a very normal childhood. Parents were both married. We were not a blended family. We were a nuclear family. Parents were both hardworking, involved in our local Baptist congregation. We were in Sunday school. We were in Sunday worship. We were involved on Wednesday nights. However, within the family, there were it's just hard to it's almost hard to put to words, but there were some issues, and I think that there were some struggles with mental health in regard to one of my parents. And so what appeared to be idyllic on the outside was not on the inside, and I think that's more common than we'd like to admit, especially in a small town, because you know that people are watching. And you want to, that's right. You're under a microscope. And so you want to convey to the community that you have it all together. I mean, my goodness, we were very active in the church. And in reality, we did not. So I felt like, and I know my sisters would agree if they had the opportunity to speak with you, that we were walking on eggshells as children, that you just never knew what to expect. And because of that, and I've done my own research and I've been in counseling situations, your body finds itself in a fight or flight mode all the time. And when you are in that constant state of fight or flight, it's just not, it's not good for your mental health.
No.
And I was in that situation for years.
How many siblings did you have?
Do
you have?
Two sisters. They all struggle with anxiety.
And where are you in the?
I'm the oldest.
The oldest. Okay.
Yeah. So I sort of found myself in more of a parental role, because I think I knew early on that this was not a health. I probably couldn't put words to it.
Sure.
But I think I knew pretty early on that this was not the healthiest environment for my sisters and me. So I had to put on the hat of parent, and I've always heard there's this, I don't know if it's a syndrome, but there's this theory called the little adult, and a lot of pastors or a lot of folks who went into the ministry found themselves sort of in that role of, caretaker for their siblings. And so I guess it was just a natural extension that I move into a caretaking role as a vocation.
That's so interesting, because I've had a conversation with another pastor locally who had a similar experience.
It's a theory. Psychologists have promoted this theory, and I think there's some real truth to it. I've heard other pastors
that
speak
makes
of it.
sense.
So, but we found ourselves in a volatile situation, in the home that we were raised in, and it all came to a head. It didn't come to a head, soon after leaving the nest. It took years. And so anxiety tends to manifest itself in a variety of ways, in a variety of seasons. Maybe it's not after the season that you're coming out of that volatile situation. It could take years. And so I found myself, this is prior to marrying my now wife, I found myself living alone, pastoring a small rural church in Texas. And that's when it began to manifest itself. I had shortness of breath, I had heart palpitations, just an overall sense of doom and gloom, not for sure of the future, not knowing what was going to happen, uncertain of just what was to come. So I remember going to my family physician, and they thought that I was having heart issues. So I had to go through,
of course,
EKG and
rule all of that
that's
out.
right. I went to go see a cardiologist, and at that time I was, 30, 31, and so they put me through a stress test. Of course, I was overly stressed out, thinking, I could drop dead of a heart attack at any moment. And the cardiologist said, there is absolutely nothing wrong with you.
So then what?
So I go back to my family physician, and they read my reports, and they said, have you ever dealt with anxiety? And I said, I don't know. I mean,
Right.
You had me all scared. I was having a heart condition. And so they started asking me questions. Do you deal with this or that? And I said, yeah, I do. So they started me on some anxiety medication. And it was a very low dose. They upped my dosage. They actually changed the medication. And I'll just be incredibly frank here, to Prozac, which is a depression med. But my doctor said, this also can be used for anxiety. so I started taking that in addition to seeing a counselor. And again,
so important.
that's
that
right.
Combination.
It's
not just medication.
It's a
but
very holistic approach.
Yes.
There's not a one track to take when it comes to grappling and getting your anxiety under control. It is very holistic.
And you mentioned trying different medications, different dosages, and a lot of people don't realize what a journey that is to try. You have it's not like with some physical illnesses where you have a tried and true medication that works for most people. It's very different with mental illness. I know my son, it took 7 years with his bipolar disorder to get his medication to what he could tolerate and what worked.
Yeah. And what could you, I know when I first started the medication, I just felt like there was no emotion, that I was in a zombie-like state. And so you go from high emotion to experiencing no emotion, and you really need to find that sweet spot because you feel like you're not living.
Yeah.
So it did take some changes in the dosage. It took some changes in the type of medication to figure out what was that happy medium where the lows were not that low and the highs were not that high, and you could be, sort of in an even kill position mentally. So I finally found that, and with medication, with support from, soon after that, I'm married, with support from my wife, Chastity, some other trusted friends. Of course, there's always this fine line for someone in my position, and I don't think it's just for clergy. It's anyone in leadership in a smaller community. How much do you share? How much do you not share? Because not everybody can handle that, knowing that their religious leader is on medication, is seeing a counselor, and so I had to be careful with that. But I also think that there's some, to me, if I were a parishioner sitting in the pews, there is a certain level of, he's one of us.
Yeah.
To me that would be refreshing to know that my leader grapples with the same kind of stuff that they grapple with.
Yeah, that it would make them more open to coming to you if they have some issues.
That's right. And, after I really began to share my story, I'd moved on to another call since then, another church. But after I began to share my story, you'd be amazed, Betsy, the number of people who would come to my office and say, thank you for sharing your story. I'm dealing with the same thing. What is your advice for me? And oftentimes I would get someone coming to my office in a time of distress, dealing with anxiety, dealing with OCD, some sort of disorder, and they were told, pray it away.
Of course.
Pray it away. If you are strong in your faith, Jesus will see you through this season. And I'm not denigrating the power of God. We know that God works in some incredibly miraculous ways, and God can bring forth healing, physical healing, emotional healing, spiritual healing, because we've all seen that happen. But I do believe that God has gifted us with modern medicine, and modern medicine includes Prozac for one, or the gift of being able to see a counselor because God laid it on someone's heart to go into the ministry of counseling. And so he just...
I so agree with you on that, because I went through a period of counseling a few years back, and I absolutely believe that God was working through that counselor. God's spirit was definitely guiding her in her work with me.
Well, and even if they're a dedicated Christian counselor or not, because some counselors will advertise, I am a Christian counselor.
Mm-hmm.
And I never saw a Christian, quote unquote, Christian counselor.
Mm-hmm.
All of my counselors were people of faith, but they did not advertise that.
Right, mine too.
So I don't think that you have to necessarily see someone who advertises
Right.
him or herself as a Christian counselor, because I believe the Holy Spirit can work through
Absolutely.
a wider variety of counselors
I
than
agree.
just someone. But back to what you said, and I'm going to reiterate this for the folks who are watching and they think, if I'm on medication by itself, I can beat this. Or if I'm seeing a counselor without medication, or I'm doing one or the other, and I'm not involved in a local community of faith, don't do that. It is a holistic approach. Your faith community is going to surround you.
Yes.
And I know that this is something you may not want to share with the wider community, but if you're involved in a small group Bible study, Sunday school class, you have some trusted confidants in your congregation, share with them, because they're going to walk with you through this valley.
Yes.
They're going to pray with you. They're going to check on you. Those are the people you can lean on. Visit your physician. Allow them to try different medications, prescribe different medications, or psychiatrists, and then see an LPC. And it's that holistic approach that is going to help you to begin to put a damper on anxiety.
Yes. I agree with all of that. That's so powerful that you're sharing this, and I think it can be so encouraging, not just to our community here, but this will go up on YouTube, so it will reach a wider audience outside our little hometown, and I think it just offers so much encouragement and guidance for how to seek help, and not just for anxiety disorder, but so much of what you said applies to other mental disorders, and seeing your primary care, reaching out to find an appropriate counselor, and not being afraid to add the medication, and with the knowledge that the medication may take a little while to get just right. What would you say to a family coming to you with their child or perhaps their grandchild exhibiting some symptoms of anxiety? Because so many young people nowadays are dealing with anxiety. I think more than ever before.
I think that's what
even
that's
children
what
that are not
statistics
coming from such a traumatic household that you grew up with, but perhaps just the way society is in general is causing them some anxiety. But what is there any guidance that you would give them that's more specific to children?
I will share some more of my story. So my wife and I, 5.5 years ago, adopted 3 wonderful boys out of the foster care system in Texas. When they came to us, they were all heavily medicated. They had been diagnosed with depression, and they were all under the age of 10.
Oh my goodness.
And were on a significant amount of mood stabilizers, antidepressants, and I mean, my goodness, under the age of 10.
Wow.
But as you said, I mean, even those children that are in a stable situation deal with this very thing, and research will tell you a lot of it has to do with social media or technology and the ability to get on social media on their phone, because they all have phones, and a lot of that is exacerbating the reason why so many children and teenagers are dealing with it. So personally, what we did was, after they came to us, we made sure that they were on the right kind of medication, and then we began particularly searching for counselors, psychiatrists, psychologists who dealt with children. For us, we even became more narrow than that, and we looked for mental health professionals who dealt with children in trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And there are so many different specializations. You can get on there on the internet and Google and find mental health professionals who
Right.
really specialize with children, and in particular children with trauma, because I wanted, and I'll give you another example. When we lived in Tennessee, we found a mental health provider who not only dealt with children in trauma, but who was also adopted out of the foster care system. And she counseled my oldest son, and it was a match made in heaven, because she knew exactly what he had been going through.
That's wonderful.
So there are people out there who can truly identify with what your children are dealing with, and I'd find those people. And we drove an hour to meet with her, and an hour home. But you know what? It was worth that 2-hour round trip for him to be able to open up to her in such a way. And she's saying, I know exactly what you're going through, Mark. So I would seek those people out. Don't be afraid to try different medications at the counsel of their physician. Right. Because their physician, their pediatrician will know. And then again, it is to me, I see it as a 3-pronged approach. It is medication, it is a mental health provider, and it is a loving faith-based community that will surround you during these times.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
For your time, for your sharing, for your openness, for your advice. I think, it's just such sound advice. I'm glad you reiterated it several times, because that combination of treatment saved my own son and saved me during a very difficult time. And I agree with you that seeking that combination of professional help, of medication that works, and sharing with your community so that they can support you is so important. But I'm so blessed to know you, and Edenton's so blessed to have you here in this community.
We're honored to be here. We love this place. We have been embraced with open arms. Thank you for what you're doing through the Mental Health Connection. I know that several of our folks here at Edenton Baptist are actually on the advisory board.
You're so awesome.
You are doing such important work trying to break the stigma of mental health. And I know that it's going to bear fruit. Well,
God is guiding us. Anything that we're doing that's working is because God's with us. So thank you for listening, and you all have a blessed day.